Alright, now we're going to create additional components that are going to represent form elements such as fields and labels. Let's start with a registration form. I'm going to open up component that contains this form, register.vue, and right here these div elements represent individual form fields that include label as well as the form field itself. So I'm going to create component with the name app form field that is going to store markup for individual form field. And in here as well, I'm following the convention and use prefix app in the component name because it is going to be the base component used for all fields in the application. As always, I'm going to create new file for this component with the same name, and right here, let's paste the markup of the form field. Of course, this component has to accept some additional information because, for example, label of every field will be different, as well as some other pieces of information such as field types and field identifiers. So I'm going to create script section right here in order to declare props for this component. And the props will be the following. We're going to accept label from outside, as well as type and identifier for form fields. And now in the markup of this component, I'm going to reference all these props. In here, we're gonna show label. Right here, I'm gonna use type and ID props. And also, in order to connect this label with form input, I'm going to use identifier, so that whenever we're gonna click on this label, the connected input field will be focused. And now let's get back to register.vue component and pass all necessary props into this component. Label, type, and ID. Let's also duplicate markup of this component a couple more times since we have 3 fields in this form. And use proper values for these props. In the second case, we're using password form input, and the third input field will be used to input password confirmation. And with that, we can remove rest of the markup for form elements right here. And visually, we're not supposed to see any changes in the browser. Still, all form elements are shown as before, but now in the component tree we're seeing that every form input is represented by the app form field component. Not only form input, but each such component contains the label as well as form input. But why don't we go further and create additional components to represent inputs as well as labels? I'm gonna do just that. Right here, firstly, I'm going to cut the markup of the label and create new component with the name app label. Let's create new file with the same name and paste markup for the label. We're going to pass text for this label as a default slot, therefore I'm going to use slot component right here so that everything that is going to be passed in between component text will be injected in the place where this slot component is used. And as for this ID prop, we don't even have to declare props in this component because if we're going to pass ID from outside, Vue is automatically going to assign this ID to the root element of this component. So we just have to pass text for this label in between component text. And same thing we're going to do with the markup of the input element. I'm going to create app input component. Let's create a new file for this component and paste markup right here. And just like we have done to app label component in here, we also don't have to declare any props for type and identifier. Instead, we're basically going to pass them from outside, and Vue is going to assign them to the root element of this component. It's called attribute inheritance. And there we go. In the component tree, we're seeing that every app form field component is split up by 2 other components, app label and app input. And that's pretty much it. Now all we have to do is to actually reuse same app form field components in the login form. Let's copy usage of this component, paste it right here, remove the previous markup of this input field, and do the same with another field for password. Link to the source code of this project will be, as always, in the video description.